today because I think it's a good idea to put everything into a context, because there's a lot you can do in terms of working with Office 365, with OneDrive, and with those integrations that you can do today. We'll start off maybe just by talking a little bit about Azure and Active Directory and single sign-on. How many people here have got a single sign-on working at the moment? Most of you. We use it all the time in its learning for accessing our its learning instances, so we know it works well, we know it's really robust. If you don't have it set up, if you want to talk to one of the Dutch guys after this, then it's something that's relatively simple to set up. You can do most of the work yourself. We're here on the Azure Marketplace and made this as easy as possible. It works today and it brings great benefits. Just being able to log on once. We log on with we call it our corporate account, but for me that's our Active Directory account, and it gets us into all of its learning instances, so we know it's really beneficial. And it means I don't need to remember this really, really long password that was given to me a long time ago. So it's great having that single sign-on. The other thing that we can do with OneDrive today, and you're going to see some demos and so on of this afternoon, is you can sync your OneDrive with its learning, and a teacher or a student can use OneDrive to set an assignment or to answer an assignment. You can put it into courses, into plans, into assignments, into tasks, and into the library. You set it up once, and then it works with OneDrive. And of course, one of the challenges we have is Office 365 is a big set of tools. So really here we're talking about OneDrive integration. And it doesn't matter if it's a commercial OneDrive or it's a personal OneDrive, this works really well, and you'll see this afternoon. It's easy to set up and easy to use. And if I have read-only access to that file, I see it read-only. If I've got read-write access, I can change it as well. So it's a really good way of working. The other thing that we have already in its learning, and again you'll see some of this afternoon, is the idea of collaboration. So being able to set up a document and collaborate on it. So we do that through the task tool at the moment, so we may move that to another place next year, we'll see. We may make it sort of more transparent, and you'll see some designs we have. We may make it easier just to grab something from Office 365 and use it. You can then give it to your course, and then you can say if everybody has read-write access, so students can work on it together collaboratively in real time, or it's a group, or it's one student or 10 students, however many you want. And we handle all of that. And it may seem like a relatively simple thing, but in the background we're doing a lot because we designed this so if a student arrives, say, 3 days into the term, so they arrive late for first enrolment, and they don't yet have a OneDrive account from you guys or their own, if a teacher gives them work through its learning, we remember that, we remember they need access, and then when they get their OneDrive account and log on and synchronize it, the work will be waiting for them. Okay? So that's one of the big advantages over some tools that even if a student doesn't yet have their Office account from the school or the organisation, we know that at some point they'll need access to these things that the teachers have given them. And this is a real benefit. We'll see this bring big benefits right at the beginning of term when students are arriving late, because any work they've been given through OneDrive is there waiting for them. And we have the built-in Office tools, and we took a straw poll this morning. Not many people are using those, but I know it is used well by some of the smaller schools in the Netherlands. These are the ones where you can use Excel, PowerPoint and Word without a Microsoft account and without needing a Microsoft account, and it just works in the browser. So it's giving those brand new up-to-date tools, but without having to have a Microsoft account, and that data never leaves the logins and so on, they don't leave its learning. We don't create accounts in the background in Microsoft or anything like that. We keep all of those users within its learning. And you can do things like collaboration real time and things like that. So that's where we are today, and you're going to see a lot more of that this afternoon, which is really good. But let's talk about what we're doing moving forward. So the all-in-one grader is something we released last year. It's a really good tool because you can sit on one screen. I can have my Word document open, I can make changes, I can give feedback. From the next release, you'll see a little record icon that pops up, the screen recorder that works. It doesn't use Flash anymore, so you'll see that appearing after release 104, I think, so sometime in January. So that's a great tool, and you can see that can come from OneDrive or it can be our built-in tool. And again, you'll see some of that today, and this works really well on tablets, and it works really well, you know, whenever you're sort of sat down and doing grading. So the all-in-one grader is something we released not long ago, and we've built it into all of our tools. So that's where we are today, but let's talk about tomorrow. And I'm going to show some video of some things that we have working. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about what we want to do with SharePoint and Teams, which is further away. So this idea of being able to make a copy, I mentioned it this morning, that's when I can go into my Office tools, I can grab something as a teacher from OneDrive that maybe has some assignment questions or some sort of what we call educational scaffolding. It has something that the students all need to receive. And rather than just give them a copy that they need to download and work with and upload again, we give them a copy that when they click it, it's their copy and they can work on it straight away. And we call that make a copy. Sometimes assignment templates, but make a copy. And that's a big tool in Teams for Education. So Microsoft Teams for Education has that, and we will soon have that as well. It'll be early next year that everybody will benefit from that. It's in development, and it's this idea of making a copy. Between now and back to school, our two big pushes are going to be on Teams for Education integration and SharePoint integration. We've got some planning meetings with colleagues from the Netherlands, which we'll plan before Christmas to see how they're using SharePoint. This is something that needs a little bit of help from Microsoft. We're in the process of getting some new support from them in terms of being able to get this integrated in the way we want. And what we're really talking about here, and I'll show you the designs for this, is the idea that if something exists on SharePoint, then I can link to it. I can put a link into its learning, and then all of the students who have access will be able to see it, but back on SharePoint. So what we're not doing is copying things and moving things around. We're keeping everything in SharePoint, or we're keeping everything in Teams. But the idea is you can use the great features of Teams, things like conversations and things like that, and then you can link to them, and you'll be able to put it into courses and to plans and so on. So if you use SharePoint as your central resource of information, we'll work transparently with it. If you're one of those organisations, and I guess there's a lot of people in this room where your Microsoft reps are knocking on your door saying you should be using Teams for education, we know they're having a real big push on that, then you'll be able to grab resources from Teams from Education and use them in its learning. So let's first start with this concept of make a copy. So this is a video that we took from our test system. It's something that's nearly ready to release. So here I am going into assignment tool, and I'm popping a title in, and then a item, and then I'm going to go to my files, and I'm going to grab something from my computer, which happens to be a Word document. Okay, and then I get a choice now whether I want to make a copy for each student or I want to have a view. So what I'm doing is I'm deciding at that point. It goes into our new workflow. Some of you will have seen this new tool. Here I am as a student, and when I hit answer, it's opening it in Word Online, and I can see the questions that the teacher's put forward. So that's my copy. And as the student's working on that, I as a teacher can see their work. Okay? So I can go in and I can add comments if the students ask me to. And then after I've completed that and I submit it, it's doing a couple of things in the background. It's locking it so the student can't change it anymore. Okay, it's not copying it, this is now locked. Student sees a read-only version, teacher has a read-write version. So here I am in the all-in-one grader, and I can see what the student's written, and I can use all the features of Office, and I can comment, and I can add titles, and I can add underlining and things like that. Obviously, I can do this as the student's working on it, or I can go back and say the assignment's not complete, and the student can resubmit. And then the student gets a notification saying, go back in and make some changes. Okay. But they've not left the browser, they've not needed to worry about downloading software, everything's happening within its learning. And as you can see, this is not a mock-up, this is something we've taken from our test system. It's nearly ready for release. It's not quite. We released this for Google last year, and we've had an unbelievable take-up. So we are being a bit careful about the Microsoft side, because we'll have an unbelievable take-up of that. So we need to make sure we're in a good place in terms of support and robustness. So it's working, we're just getting ready. And of course, as well as that document, when we have the the tool, the new audio-video recorder, I can record something as well, and that will go along with that document. So It's Learning's handling the security. Teachers don't have to worry about that. They don't have to worry about it at all. If the teacher says, that if there's a deadline, the student submitted it, that deadline's passed, you can't edit it. If the teacher chooses to, they can open it back up and students can go back in and work on it. And as far as the student's concerned, they don't even need to go into OneDrive and into Office. They can do everything through It's Learning. So we're trying to make this as easy and as simple as possible. So we have all of the hard work in the background, talking to OneDrive, etc. And the teachers and the students benefit from a really nice workflow. You can say more than one document. You can make a copy of more than one document. We find that can get confusing for the student if they've got multiple things, so we try and recommend use only one. But you can also add other documents from OneDrive and say these are read-only, so the student can have materials associated with it as well. It's a really powerful tool. It's a really nice way of working. It's something that Teams say is their big selling point. Well, here's it working within It's Learning. And of course, we've got our plagiarism tool. It will work with that. We've got group assignments and peer assignments. It will work with those as well. And this workflow and this all-in-one grader, I think, is a really nice way of speeding up those tasks for teachers.
So I do have a question. Does this work with the peer reviewing that?
It does, yes.
Okay.
You can. It works with peer review, and if you have it, it works with the plagiarism detector as well.
Okay.
So what we do then is we do actually send a copy of it to the plagiarism tool because they're not allowed to read it from OneDrive or whatever. We send a copy to it, they look at it, and you'll get that same report back in your same assignment tool. All in that grader, it'll all happen in that place. And you can set deadlines and so on, all of the things you normally do with assignments, you can do with this. I said it's really close to being released. I think it may be release 105, which will be sometime around Feb. Fingers crossed. It's working now, and it's a really good tool. We just need to make sure it's got a little bit of a polish around it. So that's what we are planning to do, and then we have so that's working with our own version of Word. So you don't need to have it in OneDrive. We're also working on the version of this that goes out to puts it in the student's OneDrive as well. Okay, so that's working with our built-in version of Word. The next task is to do it with OneDrive, so you can have it as part of your OneDrive work. Those of you that have Office 365 installations, that does mean you need to go in as an administrator and give It's Learning permission as an external tool to lock onto those students' pieces of work. And that's something which it's a one thing you just have to do once. We've got help and instructions. So let's talk about the other things and what we have planned. So that's soon. Hopefully early next year, starting with our tool, and then a couple of releases later with OneDrive. And it doesn't matter if it's, it has to be the school's OneDrive. It has to be your official Office 365 account that students use. They won't be able to do it with their personal account, okay? Because we need special permissions to give teachers access to it and so on. So it's something that is done through your official account. And that's the same with Google as well. You can only do it with your official Google account. You can't use your own personal Google when we're doing this in Google either. So let's talk about the next thing. This is something that is in planning. Again, we've taken this from our test system. It has a few rough edges. It's not as close to being released. I think this is going to be probably into Q2, maybe towards the end of Q2. But what we want to do, it's not very common, by the way, to see Google and Office. You can turn them on and off. I don't think we've got any customers in the Netherlands that got both turned on. We've got some in Denmark where they just allow teachers and students to use their own tool. They choose, which is quite interesting. So, as you may know, you can turn off Google Drive and you can turn on 365 and you can turn on 365 and turn off. But this test system happened to have them both on. And so what we're doing is now straight under the Add tool, I can go into Office, and then we'll have a choice that looks like this. Initially, it will be OneDrive, which we have at the moment. Then we'll be adding Teams and SharePoint towards Q2. OneNote is a bit further away. How many people here use OneNote a lot? Yeah. We know it's a very popular tool, but it's got some ring fencing around it that we need to work very carefully around. So that's a little bit further away. We're starting the research for that now. These are actually being planned and we're working on them. This is already in It's Learning. That I think is probably going to follow later, and I just can't promise it by back to school. I think that's going to be after, unfortunately. But it's something that we're active on. This is where we want to be. So no matter which parts of Office 365 you use, whether it's SharePoint, Teams, OneNote or OneDrive, and you'll be able to turn each of them on and off. Okay? So if you don't use Teams, it doesn't need to appear. We don't want to confuse your users. So you'll see this new interface with just OneDrive to start with, then I imagine Teams, and then SharePoint, and then we're working hard for OneNote, and I think that's going to follow just that little bit later. And if we take the example of Teams or SharePoint, what we're doing is allowing you to grab something using the Teams picker or the SharePoint picker. So you as a teacher need to have access to it. We then have some interesting challenges, because what we will do in the background is if you add it into a class, we will then tell SharePoint or tell Teams that everybody in that class now has read access. So that's what we will do in the background. So we've got some careful things to think about there. Okay? Because we want you to view this within Teams and SharePoint. So if you like, you go to view to SharePoint and it'll open up, Word or open up Excel. We don't want to be moving things around. So there are some interesting technical challenges around this. I've got to think a little bit around that. Because of course sometimes you have rules that say this item can't be viewed by students, just for teachers only. And what we may need is that to be moved into the teacher's own area and then shared. Okay, so there's a few technical things that we're working on. We're talking to customers and so on at the moment, but this is where we plan to be, and I'm very confident that we'll have Teams and SharePoint before back to school. That's our sort of big task for the next 6 months or so. Any questions on that? Because this is the sort of the real nuts and bolts. We want you to know we're working on it. We want you to know that's where we're heading, and we just wanted to share that there are just 1 or 2 interesting technical challenges, especially around very secure instances of SharePoint. It'll be under your control, so if you have SharePoint and you don't want teachers to access it, you don't turn it on, and they won't even, they won't see those icons. It'll all be done through the settings in It's Learning. And that can be changed by your administrators. You don't need to contact us. As soon as you know, you have a page inside, those of you who are administrators, a page inside It's Learning that allows you to turn on and off Google, on and off Dropbox, on and off Office. It'll be the same for Teams and so on. We won't be forcing anybody to use this. Where we're coming from is we know people will use Teams. That's going to happen. Okay? Your schools and your teachers, it is going to happen. Just as many people in some countries like the US and Sweden are using Google. We know you are. And we want to make sure that we've got a good, solid integration that allows you to continue to use those if you want, but still get all the benefits of It's Learning. So, we are committed to making sure you have access to those. Okay.
Steve, I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you give us an impression of how many developers are working on?
Yes, I could. I probably can't tell you down to the guy or girl. We've got about 100 or so